and audiences are after, this perspectival problem is perhaps related to the role of the middle class, the main audience of this program, in the context of globalization and American decline. How do we deal with multiple perspectives and remain at the center of the screen? Even as the story suggests getting our way may not result in a happy ending. What does all this have to do with religion? Well, in a certain sense, popular culture and analysis of the discussions about popular culture provide us with a constant update about what Americans think and feel. Programs like Lost and also Heroes might hold special appeal to a generation of 20, 30, and 40-somethings who'd grown up in a relatively stable worldview of U.S. dominance that was irrevocably shaken in the context following 9/11. Both Lost and Heroes echo the sense of vertigo that many people in the U.S. experienced in the reeling moments in the aftermath of that event. Both also articulate key concerns of the moment. In the midst of unspeakable tragedy and the slippery presence of evil, who could be a leader? And what, indeed, does leadership look like? How can a society be prepared for events that have previously seemed so utterly impossible? What do we do when the worldviews of science and faith seem to clash so completely and incontrovertibly? How do we learn to identify clues to the new meanings in our world as they emerge? How are we to live together in a diverse society, even as we come to recognize that the beliefs of some members hold the potential for violence, and the beliefs of others can result in surprising and sometimes quite positive alliances? And how are we to tell the good guys from the bad guys, especially when the more we learn about the good guys, the more their actions raise questions about their loyalties and their commitments, and even their measure of personal character? In short, I think that rather than providing us with answers, television does an excellent job of articulating the questions of our lives and beliefs, while our analysis can also point out the people and symbols that are missing from, or misunderstood or limited by stereotypes within our most central stories. The television stories people love are those of struggle, of self-sacrifice and teamwork, and ultimately of hope. So as we try to understand why real people do what they do and why they value what they value, we need to take seriously this world in which reality is constructed and through which we construct our own understandings. Thank you.
Siegler is assistant professor in the Department of Religious Studies at the College of Charleston, where he teaches a variety of courses, including Asian religions in America, religion in film, and religions in China and Japan. He has published a textbook called New Religious Movements, and is currently working on a book about globalized Taoism. Elijah's paper kind of flips the title of the panel, Religious but Not Spiritual, or maybe we put your title, Elijah. Religious but Not Spiritual, Everyday Faith in the Works of Tom Classen.
Well, thank you all a lot. It's great to be here. My talk today, like all the others, is excerpted from a much larger essay. In this case, my written essay looks at not one particular show, but the religious themes of writer-producer Tom Fontana, focusing on the three dramas that he's best known for and which he refers to as his trilogy, namely St. Elsewhere, which was on NBC from 1982 to 88, Homicide, Life on the Street, which was on NBC from 93 to 99, and Oz, which was on HBO from 97 to 2003. How many people count themselves a fan of at least one of those three shows? Anybody? A couple people? Okay, good. Fontana was born in 1951, raised in Buffalo, New York, in a middle-class Catholic family. In the late 70s and early 80s, Fontana was a struggling playwright in New York City. In 1982, he met TV producer Bruce Paltrow, who hired him to write a script for a new medical drama on NBC. Since then, Fontana has been one of TV's most acclaimed writers-producers. He's best known for having, to quote a kind of piece about him, pushed the envelope of traditional drama. Don't you hate that phrase, push the envelope of traditional drama, and challenged audiences to follow him into new territory. Through unusually complex scripts, including lots of formal twists, in-jokes, and since Oz, he's been known for his use of graphic sex and violence. In my paper, I argue a number of things about Fontana. First of which, it's his really unique and consistent religious vision that should constitute his lasting contribution to TV, more than his use of extreme, graphic sex and violence or intertextuality. But in the following comments, I'm really going to focus on how Fontana valorizes everyday lived religion in his TV characters, and he offers a critique of unfettered spirituality. In other words, religious but not spiritual. That's what I'm going to focus on here. And that's why I think part of his genius, his TV genius, is that he writes against the grain of a lot of other shows which do focus on spirituality, kind of generic spirituality, which is why I think he's quite a unique writer. And this is based, obviously, on my own analysis, also on a lot of interviews that he gave in published sources, as well as comments that he made at a panel that I was moderating in New York a couple years ago. And finally, a lengthy phone conversation I had with him for the purposes of writing this article. Not that, this is just, I'm not speaking as Fontana's mouthpiece, although I'm a fan. And the analysis is my own, but he's very articulate, as maybe some of you will see, because he's going to be here at USC on October 22nd for another one of these forums, and I'm sure he'll have, he can speak much more intelligently about his own work than I can. So maybe some of you will see that. To understand how Fontana's work is religious, it is important to see the ways in which it is not religious. As a Catholic, Catholic writer, Tom Fontana might be expected to mine the rich Catholic visual vocabulary, ermine robes, saints in stained glasses, Christ bleeding wounds, etc., to add imagery, kind of sensational imagery to his scripts. In fact, he is on the whole uninterested in exploiting the sheer visual thrill of the religious image. Of course, Fontana sometimes does this, but he really has never written, kind of a shootout in an underlit church with tons of candles, things that are sort of staples of the TV cliche involving churches and priests and so forth. If Fontana does not use religion as a source of flashy visuals, neither does he use it as a source of topical hot-button issues. Dealing as he does with crime and punishment, death, and the extremes of human behavior, Fontana, you might expect, would have written about pedophile priests or suicide cults or Muslim terrorists, but he really doesn't write about any of those things. He's not a ripped from the headlines type of author. I mean, that's really the kind of law and order stock and trade of kind of looking at the most sort of sensational, newsworthy aspects of religion. Finally, Fontana is not a religious writer if by religious you mean moralistic. His scripts are very much concerned with ethics and justice, but do not have a, quote, moral to the story. In an article pointing out existential themes in homicide, the author Philip Lane compared that show to earlier cop dramas, sort of classic cop dramas, if you will, such as Dragnet. And he writes, questions of right and wrong, good and evil, do not boil down to just the facts man in homicide, but to the rules of the game and how it is played, kind of echoing what Craig was saying about The Wire earlier. And in fact, Fontana has given some specific criticisms of TV shows that do presume to provide answers to life's moral questions. As he told me, they deal with huge issues in 45 minutes, and they expect me to sit down and go, oh wow, I'm glad that person saw the light in 45 minutes, they changed forever. They'll never be a bad person again. So that's his own criticism of the easy, moralistic wrap-up of the hour-long drama. But in another interview, though, Fontana recognizes the place of moralistic shows, specifically mentioning Touched by an Angel and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, saying, that isn't to say a good, simple morality play isn't as effective as An Hour of Homicide. As he told me, you need parables as well as gospels. So in Tom Fontana's script, if religion manifests neither as compelling visuals, nor hot-button issues, nor as moral fables, then how is Fontana a religious writer? Well, one answer might come from contrasting his what he sees as Angel and Quinn as the like as parables, in other words, easily decodable, moralistic, narratively closed, to his own work, which he sees more like gospels, in the sense that they're complex, narratively open, polyvalent. Like the gospels, and of course many other religious texts, Fontana's scripts are interested in theological issues as they are played out in people's lived experiences and emotions. And these issues that he's interested in have remained remarkably consistent in Fontana's scripts over 2.5 decades of writing for television. And these include the search for redemption, not really a new thing, the nature of forgiveness, the question of evil. Fontana's scripts shouldn't be seen as final pronouncements on these issues, but as tentative explorations. These are the issues that remain unresolved and perhaps unresolvable in Fontana's own life. As he stated, quote, I constantly write about forgiveness because it's the hardest thing I can do. I write about it because I need to know how it works. It constantly eludes me. When an interviewer from Corrections Today, that's a prison magazine, or a magazine for prison workers, that interviewed him about Oz, he asked Fontana whether he believes in inherent evil. Fontana replied, it's interesting you ask that question because it's a question that I constantly ask